Miami. Oh.
Let me give you a quick example about the maritime law, the law of water, the law of the sea. Money is water by law. So when a ship, this is why all ships are female. By law, all ships, rocket ship, sailing ship, airship, it doesn't matter. If it's a ship, it's female.
Right.
Because the captain always refers to his ship as she.
Right.
She's a good ship, or she's done this. Why she? Because she delivers the product.
Right. The
Without
vessel.
she, there is no product, right?
It's a vessel. It's a
Of course,
it's a
of course it
container,
is a
like
vessel.
the
So
feather.
is your body. It's a vessel that produces a product.
Right.
So when the ship pulls into harbor, it stops, and where it parks is called its berth. It's berthing a ship, or she sits in her berth. And every item on that ship, coming out that ship, is money. It's money changing hands.
Right.
It came in on water. So it's called. So every piece has to have what is called a certificate of manifest, because she is sitting in her berth. That's why when you were born,
I had a birth
you
certificate.
had your mother's water broke. You were inside a container of water. Her water broke, and you came out, and therefore you have to have a birth certificate.
Wow.
There, and it's got to be signed by the dock, because that's where the ship is sitting. Because the dock is where the ship sits.
It's funny.
So once you begin to see how the words and terms are all based on maritime admiralty, the law of water, the cash flow, the liquid asset. Why?
Just in English, the dock, the water.
Yeah, of course. But of course,
Other
it goes all the way back to the English or British domination of the seas.
Oh.
And so when the British began to dominate the seas, the Knights Templar Masonic Order of the Knights Templars, who have been in the middle of Asia, came back into Western Eastern Europe, brought all of these concepts, and it was developed into a commercial system of words and terms and symbols which are used in courts and government and corporations. You know, your body as a corporation. No, that's a whole story. We could talk for hours on this, but your body is a corporation.
Of cells, you mean?
No. It's called, and by law, your body, your physical body is a corporation. And so when you die, you're a corpse. Because when you're living, you're a corporation. You are a business. And hanging out with that person is bad business.
Right.
Or who I hang out with is none of your business.
Right.
Because your body is a business.
Wow.
And so you say, well, you know, what you're doing with her or him is bad business.
Right.
But of course, if you get married and she's very wealthy, you say she's of good stock, right? Words and terms are based on maritime admiralty, the law of water. And so that's why when you go into a court, you have a fence and a gate. The people sit out here and the judge sits inside. The gate is called a floodgate. When you go through the canal, you have a floodgate.
Right.
So when you're sitting out here, you're in the law of the land. The judge has no control or no jurisdiction over the people sitting out here. No jurisdiction whatsoever.
Right, because they're outside the gate.
That's outside the gate.
Right.
That's on land.
Right.
But when you walk past that gate, now you're in hot water. And someone's going to have to bail you out.
Bail, yeah.
Okay.
Bail. That's so. Did you write a book about all these
No,
maritime?
I've just been studying it for 48 years.
Wow.
But it's fascinating because when you understand that the whole subject is so large, and it would take hours and I'd have to go back to square one and walk through all the words and terms that are used in law and courts and in commerce.
Yeah.
For you to understand how pervasive this concept of water is on the earth.
Wow.
The law of water, maritime admiralty, it's an extraordinary story about how governments rule the world. And unless you understand this, you're never going to figure out what's going on. Look at it. When you walk into a courtroom and they call your name, you get up and you put your hand on the gate and you open the gate. The moment you put your hand on the gate, by international law, you of your own volition have opened yourself up to maritime admiralty law, because you were on the law of the land. As long as you don't touch that gate and go through it, you haven't opened the floodgate. Now, once you open the floodgate, there's a piece of wood on top of that gate, and it's called the bar, and you're not licensed to pass the bar. So what you've done is you've opened the floodgate, but you weren't licensed to pass the bar.
So what does that mean?
So that means that you are dead. You are now dead. Once you touch that, you are dead.
Because you're no longer in control of
That's right. You are dead. Well, you're considered to be a dead man. That's why the attorney has to speak for you. He has to represent you.
Why are you dead? Because
you went into the deep water and you died. You drowned.
Because you weren't licensed. Because you weren't.
Right. You were not licensed to pass the bar. And the bar represents a sandbar in the ocean. But the bar is what the attorneys are licensed to pass, but you're not. So the point being is that when you open that gate of your own volition, you are considered by law to be a dead man.
Really?
That's why you cannot talk to the judge, because dead people don't talk to judges. So you need an attorney who is your mouthpiece. He speaks for you because you're dead.
Well, should we do away with courts so people can get their lives back?
I would think that what you want to do is understand how the system
last
works.
January was not, in fact, perjury.
The statement of your attorney, Mr. Benedict, in Paul Jones' deposition, the statement that there was no sex of any kind, in any manner, shape, or form with President Clinton was an utterly false statement. Is that correct?
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is. Yes. If is means is and never has been, that's one thing. If it means there is none, that was a completely true statement.
What about the president's testimony in January that he didn't remember ever being alone with Lewinsky? Was that a lie?
Again, it depends on how you...
Core topics in linguistics. I have a mnemonic trick when I talk about syntax. You see? So sint and scent. What is scent is the study of scent. But of course that's just a trick in order for you to remember, because I can show you the etymology of the word syntax. Ultimately it comes from sun, which means sin or together, and tassign, which means to arrange. Tag. Sentence is not a cognate with syntax. So the word sentence comes from the Middle English word sentence, which means opinion. Sentence means sentient or sentient. They're not cognates, but as a mnemonic device, as a mnemonic trick, you can think of syntax as study of sentence structure. So what does that mean? Every sentence has a structure. Like, look at these sentences. John saw Mary as opposed to Mary saw John. So they are exactly the same words, right? But obviously, knowing English, we know that they mean two different things, because John saw Mary means a different thing than Mary saw John. And that's not because of the actual words used, because the words are the same, but it's because of the syntax of English that we interpret those two different meanings. I can say the cat chased the mouse, or potentially you can continue this sentence and make it as long as possible. The only reason we don't do it, when one reason is for practical reasons, probably by the time you finish the sentence, I have forgotten the beginning of the sentence. But my point here is that, in a way, it is our knowledge of syntax that we are applying for creating increasingly more complex sentences.
Entry Judge David-Win-Foucault-Miller. I punctuate my name because it makes me a fact and not an adjective pronoun fiction. I'm here to introduce to you to a program to bring this planet out of its adverb verb world for 8,500 years into a correct sentence structure communication syntax organization. All 250 countries worldwide have been under this adverb verb guise by the Universal Postal Union, Bern, Switzerland, established in 1873, better known as the New World Order. This technology has been perfected, and misinformation, privileged few are allowed to go free from committing crimes, and others are slapped with serious fines, prison terms for absolutely nothing. When you go looking for case law on the correct sentence structure communication syntax, you will not find anything. You have to be competent enough to understand what the correct sentence structure communication syntax means in order for you to have the knowledge to win your lawsuit. Correct the language that's wrong. The syntax is now on the table. We will write the contracts, the treaties, the trust, the constitution, so that people in the world all know where they stand. And if they know where they stand in a mathematical procedure of communications, written frontwards and backwards, so that no matter how they look at it, there is no subjective interpretation as to what it means or how it is said. And so with this level of accuracy, we are going to change this world. We are going to bring it together under one world order of correctness, just like mathematics. And we're going to use prepositional phrases and do it in the correct manner.
You go through 3 stages in life. Your first stage is you do not know what you do not know. No one was aware of syntax until you saw this program. Once you saw it, you were aware of what you did not know, which means you didn't know about the math interface on language. For 8,500 years, the entire population of the planet Earth in 5,000 languages did not know about the math interface on syntax. You were all taught when you were in 5th grade in school, never start a sentence with a prepositional phrase and never end a sentence with a prepositional phrase. Well, if you don't end a sentence with a prepositional phrase, you've got a dangling participle verb as an answer, which means your sentence is incomplete. When the government writes their instructions on most of their forms, they don't use adjectives. They only use adverb, verb, adverb, verb, adverb, verb throughout the entire sentence structure. The human mind is really unique in its ability to use deductive reasoning and logic to create the correct sentence structure communication syntax. So you got to have the knowledge to understand what is being said, because they have a code. No law or fact shall be tried in court. That is their law. That is their oath. Every judge, barrister, lawyer, attorney, worldwide, all countries, all languages swear to this, because for 8,500 years, language has been bastardized. It is adverb, verb, illusion, and act. ACT. All words that start with a vowel, A, E, I, O, and U, are followed by 2 consonants, means no contract. You're going to say, where do I find that rule? Look up every word in the dictionary that starts with a vowel and 2 consonants. And all the synonyms that reflect that word, and you will find a no contract, a negative condition of state for every single word. In 4700 BC, Pharaoh said, "So it is written, so it shall be done." There was a reason for that, because oral contracts cannot be seen or proven because of the argument. Did you hear what I said, what I meant, what I said, when I said, what I meant, what I said? If you don't see it written, you can't prove it. When you write a contract, you go into court, you have a syntax document. Every single sentence is its own independent court as you make an argument. We're not dealing with 150 to 1 variables in an oral conversation, so your paperwork is going to speak for you. It isn't what's written here. I'm writing to show you how many ways I can write it, to show you the variables, but when I speak it in one terminology, which one of the 150 variables up here did I just say to you? You don't know that. And because you don't know that, you're going to make a presumption, opinion, presumption, guess, perjury, a lie. How many different mistakes can you make? That's only 3 words. Try doing it with a lawsuit with 30,000 words on it. What do you think your variables are here? You're talking about terabyte to the terabyte power of variables. You can't get to a fact. If you can't have a fact, what are we doing? We're lying to each other. Technology brings us to a position of accuracy that cannot be argued. And the courtroom is a building. That is not the document on the piece of paper. When you write a lawsuit, the paper that you have, this is the court. And of all the 2 million words in the English language, we got 720 words that are syntax. That's it. Pretty simple. Average person has a 12,000 word vocabulary. You only need 720 to learn syntax. And in 99% of the cases, you use less than 50 different words in an entire lawsuit to win your case. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. It's so simple. Once you get it, it's mathematical. This is the court. This is the contract between you and the judge. The courtroom is irrelevant. The seals that are hanging on the walls are irrelevant. This flag is the correct sentence structure communication syntax flag, which advertises that this is correct. You place a postage stamp up on your corner. You sign across it. That makes you the postmaster transporting the vessel of the document to the clerk of the court, which is the port of the court. She puts her stamp on it. When she puts her stamp on it, you sign your name across her stamp, making you a postmaster of not only your paperwork and your vessel, now you're in contract with the port authorities of the court, because this is a courthouse, which is a foreign vessel in dry dock, so you've entered a foreign vessel.
I'm dope, face it, shoot it, freebase it, pour it in a glass, drink it, chase it, then chill, plex, feel the full effect. The impact is similar to a train wreck. It's whack to me when the beat is more hype than the MC, cause what he's saying is empty, dull, void, without substance or content. You need to slow your speed, stop the nonsense. These are the words of the rising sun, surprising some who thought I was just another humdrum, average type non-MC who...
Dollar sign. You have your dollar signs come in two forms. This is a Federal Reserve note, and that's a gold certificate. In the United States, since 1900, the red fox stamp was the only one that was published with two bars through the dollar sign. And that was published on the 2nd of November 1999 when the United States ended its third bankruptcy and became sovereign. By bringing communication skills down to a math problem, we removed the ability of an individual to lose his temper or maintain an argument. What we're doing here in syntax is we're showing you that the Bible is written in the Quran, in the Jewish Bible, and all of these different communications worldwide are written in adverb verb. They've left the words out. Why do they leave the words out? Because they can control you. So by learning syntax, you can go back and put the missing words in. In now time, you can remove the prefixes and the suffixes, which are the past and the future, and go to the root words. Then find a root word that means now time information, not the future, not a word that means no contract. If you go through any Bible phrase and you see a word that starts with a vowel and two consonants, get a book of synonyms, look up all the synonyms, and list those down, and put those in, and then put the correct prepositional phrase in front of that word. You will learn how to build a sentence correctly from that phrase. And that's why this technology scares the courts. Because no law, which is a negative condition, and no fact is the only thing that gets tried in court. If you know what syntax is, you can make a mathematical choice. You have better pieces of information to make better decisions to be good. And then if somebody with evil wants to come at you with an illusion called adverb verb, you can say, that's a lie, and I can prove it. It all comes down to who you are, what you know, and what you put on your documents that come into court. On the back of my business card is the whole procedure how to prosecute judges and attorneys. It's already written there for you. You've never had the correct sentence structure, communication, syntax, treaty on any land contract or mortgage in the history of this country's writing. It's going to be fixed when enough people are educated and you vote in syntax. We're not here to break the system. We're here to educate and correct. When I originally said to my mom and dad, I'm going to go out in the world and I'm going to teach this, they said, don't complain about the government because you don't have anything to replace it with. You can't tell somebody he's a liar if you don't have the truth in your hand. Or what my truth was, because I was misled. When you guys learn it, it just opens up your whole world. You can see a lie. You have X-ray vision over everything. Nobody can screw around with you anymore. The cops won't stop you. The courts don't want you in there. There's nothing wrong with a New World Order that's correct, where nobody can go to war anymore because you all know how to do things correctly. Having the Masonic teachings is no different than any of the religions in the world. They teach you the difference between good and evil, how to manage people. They're the ones been pulling the strings on the New World Order for 8,500 years. For every 97 followers, you got 3 chiefs. It's always 3% manages 97%. That ratio hasn't changed since the caveman. And the cream always floats to the top. The syntax separates the wheat from the chaff. There isn't anybody anywhere on this planet today, I don't care how high up in the Illuminati they are, that I can't prove they lied. And I don't have any restrictions as to how high up I go. They still can't take their lie and shove it down our throats because we've proved the lie, we've proved the fact. These are the parts of speech. There's only 10 of them. The adverb is used more in language worldwide than any other syntax of communications. And the adverb is a modifier. Also remember a vowel and two consonants. The adverb operation of syntax is a no contract issue because you're modifying the condition of a fact. If you're going to modify something, that's perjury because it's no longer the original fact. When you take a fact and you modify it with an adverb, it becomes what's called a gerund verb, which means a noun used as a verb. It's still a lie. It goes back to a math problem. Is 3 times 3 times 3 equals 27, right? So if I have a fact times a fact times a fact, I'm going to get a fact. But if I do 3 times 3 times 3 times 0 equals 0. Or if I divide, it's still going to be 0. Because a fact times a fact times a fact times a lie equals a lie. There's your math interface. On add, subtract, multiplying, and dividing, you can have a sentence with, let's say, 30 prepositional phrases, completely done correctly, and take the word for out instead of for the witness's knowledge, and then go ahead and write 29 prepositions in the correct order in the sentence, but because you dropped the first 4, now you got an adverb, adjective, pronoun all the way to the end of the sentence, and you've lost all prepositional phrases because you committed a lie to start the sentence. Therefore, you've lost everything. You can't make any mistakes in this technology. The math will not support it. We use the math to go and check it frontwards and backwards. When you write a sentence backwards, you have to use the opposite prepositions. Every sentence we write starts with a preposition for.
Plaintiffs these days just love to use what's called the reptile approach, by which they appeal to the more primitive, survival-oriented parts of jurors' brains. This strategy is usually characterized by first suggesting that the defendant presents a danger to the jurors' community, and then convincing jurors that they alone have the power and responsibility to eliminate that danger. Jurors are made to feel that their potential inaction is akin to increasing that harm. Your goal as a defendant is to fight back by engaging the more evolved parts of jurors' brains. To start, clearly explain the complexities of the case and emphasize where the plaintiff played fast and loose with the facts. You can also remind jurors that if they were on trial, they would want to be judged based on proof, not just accusation.
We're here to visit with you today about a new strategy that the plaintiffs are using in litigation called the reptile strategy. I'm going to be visiting with Mr. John Hall, National Defense Counsel, today, and what I'd like to do is take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about Mr. Hall. In Mr. Hall's career, he's tried over 100 cases to verdict. Specifically, since 1999, Mr. Hall has tried over 70 cases, meaning he's averaged 5.4 trials a year for the past 10 years, all of a catastrophic nature. So what we'd like to do is now visit with Mr. Hall about the reptile strategy and have him tell us about the tactics he's using to combat this strategy. So John, tell me about this new reptile strategy that you're starting to see in the courtroom across the country.
Well, you know, Rick, it's interesting. It's a couple of very successful plaintiffs' lawyers in the past who have had a lot of success in the courtroom, and now they've figured out they can sell their strategies and materials to other plaintiffs' lawyers. And it is a nationwide advertising program in which they're taking a particular strategy that really brings juries back to the basics, brings them back to wanting to protect themselves and their families against the big corporate world. And that's the view that the plaintiffs are putting out, so that if you don't fight that, the jurors really already start out being antagonistic against you at the time you start the trial.
Based on our research, what I have found, and I wanted to visit with you about that today for our clients, it's my understanding that a gentleman wrote the book, The Reptile Strategy, and then he also has a consultant that travels with him, and they go around and do these seminars to solicit additional plaintiff attorneys for this opportunity. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually two plaintiff attorneys, Ball and Keenan. Keenan's from Atlanta, I think Ball's up from the Northeast, who had very successful careers, been very good trial lawyers themselves. Wrote this book, and they have seen it as an opportunity. The plaintiff's bar is far more connected than the defense bar. They share briefs, they share information about cases. Simply because of their nature, they see themselves, because of where their particular jurisdictions are, they're less competitive with each other. So the plaintiff's bar is already sharing this information, and when they see a strategy that works, they tend to share it. And that's what they're doing, Keenan and Ball is doing with the reptile. This is big time business. If you go out and just like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, there's seminars being done, weekly. They're being advertised on the internet. Go look at you will be shocked if you go to Google, look at the reptile theory and how this is being marketed. I don't think any single one plaintiff strategy has ever been marketed on a nationwide basis as frequently and as continuously as this one is being done right now.
So why is it called the reptile strategy anyway?
I think only plaintiff's attorneys would come up with that name, but basically what it means is let's do away with thought, reason, and otherwise, and let's just do with emotional response to danger. Let's create a situation in which the facts of the lawsuit create a danger that threaten your nest. If you're, imagine a reptile protecting her nest, you're have an emotional reaction to something affecting your nest, and that you respond emotionally to it without thought, but in a very deliberate, straightforward, and violent way, i.e. large aberration verdicts.
So these seem like really simple concepts when you think about it. Why is it so important?
They are simple concepts, but it's simple concepts in a complex situation. Very few people try these catastrophic cases in terms of frequency, ability to come along and have an experience with them. And so what the plaintiffs do is they take a very simple concept, and that is for the jurors to protect themselves, protect their families, have a simple set of rules out there that if somebody violates, then they ought to have to be responsible to you and your family for violating the rules. They then set up a corporate world that has policies, procedures, guidelines. They set those policies, procedures, guidelines up as the simple rules. And that when those get violated, immediately the corporation ought to be punished. And that's what they really mean by reptile. They're talking about coming back and protecting their nest. So it is simple, but it is an aggressive strategy that takes away the theories of reasonableness, responsibleness, why a corporation or an individual, a doctor, a nurse, or a physician should be responsible. It takes those things away, and that if you just break a rule, which is usually a very aspirational, generic rule that nobody can comply with, if you break that rule, then you violated the law, and therefore you should be punished. If you don't face those strategies, if you don't challenge them straight up front, you can really lose control of a jury by the time you get into your case to the point they're already glazed over not listening to you.
We have very powerful tools on our side called the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. These documents state that no government can deprive us of our natural rights. So how is it happening? You must understand that the elite group controlling our government, our educational system, agriculture, and media are also in control of our free enterprise. Free enterprise is our economic system or our means of production, privately owned and operated for personal benefit. Free enterprise cannot legally be taxed unless it volunteers itself. The reason why income tax seems inescapable is because most every job on the planet requires you to sign a number of documents with fancy wording stating that you are agreeing to be a representative of a corporation or entity. What all this means is simply that when you sign working papers, which are required by pretty much every employer that you apply to, you are waiving your rights as a natural person protected under the Constitution and agreeing to represent an artificial person that is not protected under the Constitution. It's difficult to avoid because if you do not sign the document waiving your rights, you won't get the job. So why does every employer voluntarily pay taxes, which leads to the requirement of those documents? Because without doing so, the business loses all state and federal benefits provided to private or commercial business. And furthermore, most people simply accept the mistruth that income tax is required by law without investigating it. When your name is presented on a document with the first letter of your first and last name capitalized, it represents capitis diminutia minima, which occurs when a man's family relations alone were changed. It's a minimal loss of rights. When your last name appears in capital letters, it represents capitis diminutia media, which occurs when a man loses his rights of citizenship but not his rights to liberty. This means you can be fined and penalized but not enslaved or imprisoned. But when your entire name is capitalized on any document, it represents capitis diminutia maxima, which states that a man's condition changes from freedom to bondage. All rights of citizenship and family rights are surrendered. This means you can be fined, imprisoned, and enslaved in any amount for any duration at the whim of the state's suggestion. But it is important to note that if you do not legally bind yourself to these documents stating that you waive your rights and represent a corporation, you do not have to attend any court.
There are two kinds of law on the earth, as I've said. One is called civil law, which is the law of the land, and one is called maritime admiralty, which is called the law of water. The maritime admiralty is banking law. So consequently, the corporation and government and people who want to control you, they create a second you, and that second you that they control, that they created, is all capital letters. Check it out. Anytime you get a bill, you get a lawsuit, you get a fine, a ticket, somebody sends you a bill from the Department of Water and Power, check it out on your driver's license, on your Social Security card, on your insurance cards. Anything having to do with business, your name will always be in all capital letters, because only all capital letters can be dealt with by banks and government. You need to wake up and find out how this stuff really works. Because once you understand that you don't need to submit yourself as an American to a British commercial venture called courts. You're an American. You don't need to go to court. There's nobody. You only go to court because you agreed to go to court. When they send you a subpoena to court or summons to court, and they've sent you something, you look at it and say, hey, Jack, that's not me. That's in all capital letters. All capital letters is a corporation.
Those who are charged under these maritime admiralty courts usually don't understand that they are voluntarily being fined and imprisoned. When a judge calls your name and asks if you are that name, those who say yes are verbally agreeing to represent the artificial person that the name represents. In doing so, you are voluntarily waiving your rights under the Constitution. Your absolute rights as natural persons are the right to life, security, and property. And all of these are very important. Remember that you can never be deprived of these simple rights unless you are willingly waiving them. But you need to understand your rights if you want to be protected under them.